Okay, refreshed after a break. Okay, so I finished on the hitching stone, which is highly, highly magnetic. And it isn't, they say the hitching stone, but it's not actually a stone, it's actually the top part of the mountain. Again, when you start looking around, you start to see the three layers of construction, like the pre-Inca to the Inca and more modern Inca type stuff, where they use mud in between them. If they had this capability, and it was obviously easy enough for them to do, because, you know, why would you do it otherwise? Then you'd think they'd follow the same trend. And that's a kind of a clue to say that these constructions were more than likely pre-Inca. If you talk to the Inca people in Peru, they all say the same thing. You know, these buildings were already there and they kind of adopted them and built on top of them because it's great foundation. Those rocks are there already, those huge stones, so make use of them. And that's exactly what they did. So these places, I mentioned this just recently outside to a gentleman, that inside a cave on the back of Machu Picchu is this. And it's just cut out, and like I say, on the other side, away from, oh thanks very much, on the other side, away from the camera, is more constructions. What they've used these as dwellings inside. But the cave is not a natural cave, it's cut out. It's actually been cut out, bored out, and then built within. Again, you can see Inca construction, and these, which are near Lake Titicaca, are two forms of construction. You've got these here down at the bottom, which is the remnants of pre-Inca, and then the Inca have just built on top of it. What they've done is they've just used any old stone and covered it in brick, so and mud. So it ends up with adobe type brick buildings on top of these pre-Inca builds. This is interesting. This is the Solistani Tower, and there's a few of these Solistani towers near Lake Titicaca. Again, what's unusual about these is that they believe at one point the lake must have been pretty much up close to these. So the lake's considerably dropped, at least 100 feet or so further down. So obviously that was the remnants of the drought. What is interesting about these is that when they were fully constructed, the wind blowing up there, which seems always to be an evident thing that happens all the time. It blows from a certain direction and it's always windy up at the top there. Is that the sound generated from these shapes just stuck up on the top of these mountain tops generate an A sharp. For anybody who's into music, they generate an A sharp. Now, if you do your research, you'll find that there's 17 locations around this planet in ancient sites which generate a natural A sharp. That's also including some of the pyramids in Egypt. They generate an A sharp. It's assumed that that particular frequency generated in these certain locations vibrate, they resonate. So maybe they were utilizing frequencies, just as in some of the Egyptian pyramids, as these resonating sounds for entering into the deep consciousness, meditation, whatever that would be for. But it would seem that there was a knowledge, even in Peru, about generating certain sounds. Another site that's not very well known. Now, when I looked earlier, remember I told you about these platforms that were found, which looked machined, the crisscross machined. This is the Gate of the Gods, as it's known as. It's not very well known in Peru. People don't go and really see it. It's off the beaten track. But it's cut out. But I just want you to bear in mind of this crisscross machine pattern again. You see, it's exactly the same thing we saw on these platforms earlier. And those platforms are about 28 foot long and about 90 foot wide. And it looks like they completely took off, sheared off with some type of machine that cuts and grooves. And these cuts and grooves, this is about 9 foot, this door, by the way. So you can roughly work out the sizing here of these cut marks. Not something you probably would have done just by hand and with little tools and brass and copper. Again, no idea how or what that represents. But it was, like I say, it must have seemed easy to do these works of art in stone. You know, I mean, perfectly circular inside and just cut out. I mean, it doesn't seem to have any significance at all. What's it for? Why do it? Maybe it was just a test, maybe it was a bit of fun, we just don't know. But these things are scattered all over Peru. And it would seem that these have been placed in some of the hardest rocks as just to show off and say, hey, you know, this is what we can do. It would seem that this particular rock, we might have been just for the kids, I don't know. I mean, it's just a mess of cut out rocks and shapes, sizes. It's crazy, it really is. Is this the test? Is this a test stone? Is this like, or you send the kids to go and do an hour's work on it or something? We just don't know. It's generally not for anything by the looks of it, apart from a test bed, maybe. They were testing equipment, or they were teaching the kids how to do it, who knows? But plenty of these sites are all around Peru, where it seems that they're being utilised as test beds, really, by the looks of it. The precision, again, is incredible. And not only to cut out, I mean, if you look out, this is the outside of the rock, then they etch it in to cut out this one, and then they etch it in again to cut out this one, and they etch it in again to cut out this one. The work that's involved in this is incredible. And like we say, when we talk to stonemasons, they say one of the hardest things to do is to cut out from cutting out. It is extremely, extremely difficult to do. When we talk about PUMA PUNKU, we tend to see a lot of the modern day photographs. But what you're not told about PUMA PUNKU is the whole place was underground at one time. The whole place is under mud, buried under mud. What we see nowadays on television is kind of out in the open. But it never was really like that. It was covered under mud. And at 13,000 feet. So again, at the time of construction, they would have been on top of the ground. And then obviously maybe a catastrophe happened that seemed to cover these over in this silt and mud and buried them. And then later on, years later, discovered and brought to the surface by digging the land away. But it's at 13,000 feet. So whatever happened affected at 13,000 feet. Did the whole of oceans fly over to these mountains and just sweep across these mountains, covering these locations up in silt and mud? I mean, what could cause that at 13,000 feet? And this is what we're finding all around the world. These H-stones were never just there, like lying around. You know, a lot of these things were buried. And again, you can see how these constructions were put together. I mean, incredible, absolutely incredible. This is all one piece of stone, by the way, in Tiwanaku. We don't know actually what this cutout was for, what was actually in there. We're not too sure. But it's this stone, it's huge. And how did they get it there? Nobody knows. Again, even if you talk to the tour guides, they say, oh, it's not our ancestors, it's pre-Inca. Even they will openly keep saying this, and they keep telling. Nobody pays any attention. And again, these guys were dug up there. Exactly the same type of skulls. This missing people, we don't know who they are. I'm not too sure who they are. Missing people. A missing culture, but not just in Peru, but all around the world. Some of them are really unusual. Some of them are more bulbous. Some of them are very elongated. There's a variety. Even the x-rays show these elongations. Some of them are hugely elongated. These are actually in the Ica Museum, by the way. And again, they will say, we have got no idea, we've run tests, but we have got no information on that. We don't tend to get that information. Now this particular skull, which is very interesting because I want you to have a look at this here. Because this is not your normal type of any skull that we find in humans. Because we know from when we have babies, they have a little small hole here at the top of the heads. And as we grow into adults, we see the remnants of these lines coming together. And we don't see this in these in fact, it's very flat here, and then you have this bulbous bit here, and then a second bit here. But they haven't got the normal characteristics of a human skull, where we see these defects from being born, and we have this little hole, and as it grows together, as we grow into adults, we still will see on the skull these lines of where these four quarters came together. Do know about boarding? Because we don't want to get mixed up between some of these guys. These are boarded, some of these are boarded, and of course we do this with children. They've been doing this for a long time. But when you ask them why they do this, they said because they want to represent the gods, or they want the children to look more godly or spiritually. But what was the original source is the question. And it's not just Peru, it's all around the world. Again, you can see it doesn't have the normal characteristics of any known human skulls. Now, when we look at the Mera from Egypt, it would seem that the sculptures and images that we see of her are very elongated heads, as you can see. This is not a crest or crown or anything. This is an actual shaping of the head represented in a statue. And we see this many times. The Sumerians also listed elongated heads, and many other cultures did in artwork. Also, what you find, which is interesting at PUMA PUNKU, is these rocks which have these wonderful carvings on. But it isn't these rocks, everyone's drawn to these wonderful carvings. I've actually seen people put paper up and use chalk and get the pictures, and they take them home and they frame them, they put them up on the wall, and they look fantastic. For me, it's why there are over 500 drill holes in this. And they are drill holes. They're like random drill holes. There is over 500 of these drill holes all over it. And they're not natural holes, they are drill holes. And why would you have so many in one piece of rock I have no idea. For me, that was more interesting than what was actually imaged on the rock itself, is why they'd actually even do that. When you come to Bolivia, some of the sites are just so crazy. You just don't even see these things on television very rarely. On this particular place, which is known as the Samapata, it's in Bolivia, and this is the mountain top, and you can see what they've done. Apart from having dwellings here, which look like clearly these are Inca dwellings, you can tell by the stonework. But what and who did this? It's obviously very, very significant, and I don't know the reasons why they've gone to so much length to do this to a whole mountain top. It's just crazy. Drill holes, 3 in this case. You've got this one here. Let's not forget this large one here, which has been bored out. And then this one, which has been bored right through, and there's one here as well. So there's like 3 in one piece of stone. This is granite again, probably maybe level 7 in hardness. And they have to use equipment to have done this, absolutely. And as I've said earlier, something must have happened, a catastrophe of some sort, to split these huge rocks. This here, I mean, you're probably about that big. That's how big you would be. And that's about 6 foot from the ground there. So you can see what size we're dealing with here. It's the size of maybe a truck with it's perfectly cracked down the middle. So there's obviously maybe something has happened for that. I mean, this is granite. You could normally drop this from buildings and it wouldn't split so easily. But as you can see, something must have happened for these giant rocks to split. Now, in this place, which is it was, again, people say it's some type of temple, and it's in ANCASH, and we don't really know what it is, to be honest with you. But what is really significant, apart from the fact that they've used these very large stones, is that there's 2 stones right here, this one and this one. Now, I've talked to several people about this because the information that came out from this location was that these 2 stones were classed as unidentified. And I tried to find out, how do you have a stone which is unidentified? What does that mean? What does that represent? Is there anything scientific behind that? And when I talked to people, they said the same story is that tests have been carried out on these two pillars, and what we know as the unknown pillars is what it's referred to as the unknown pillars. And it's unknown because it doesn't fit into any of the categories of stone that we normally would find. And I said, well, what does that represent? It represents an unknown quality of stone. And we haven't found a place where it must have been cut from or location. So, what is that? What's a mysterious stone? It's come from somewhere. Maybe somewhere on this planet, but we don't know whereabouts it's come from. Apparently, they have not been able to identify the matching source to where this stone comes from. So they're referred to as the unknown pillars. Again, very rarely known. But they really took a lot of time in about making sure that waterways is very important to the Peruvian people. And these stretched for miles upon miles upon miles across the land. You wouldn't even know they were there. And you just see all these hills and mountains. You would never know these were there. They're cut in, these channels. So when it rains, all that water is channeled for usage. For crops, for animals to drink, washing, whatever. But the work it's involved in this is cutting out. And this isn't just cut out of the grass, and this was there. They've had to cut out these channels to carry the water. And they're perfectly cut in perfect straight lines. You know, they're about 4 feet deep, so they can channel that water. And even, this is a filtration process, by the way. You know, when you get rubbish, twigs, leaves, it's a filtration process. They're clever guys. Because it would bind up here and bind up here and bind up here, and bind and bind and bind. It's a filtration process of the water. That's what it's doing. Very, very clever. Again, more evidence of showing off that how they can cut rock so easily and with precision. But it's not the only things that we see around the world. I mean, we have these stone balls from Costa Rica, and you can see the size of them. And again, a lot of them are made from granite. What's interesting about them is that people would initially say, you watch television programs and things, that, oh yeah, it's the stone balls of Costa Rica. But it's not just Costa Rica, and a lot of people don't realise that, you know, a lot of countries have these stone balls. Where did they come from? Nobody really knows all the reasons why they were created, or even why they were in certain places. A lot of the people have just built around them. This is some gentleman's garden, and it's just there because it's always been there. So they built around these things, and they kind of adopted the stone in a sense of speaking. But the perfect, it isn't. What we don't know, it's not down to Indiana Jones and anything of this sort. It's not used for those sort of things. But these stone balls, when they were conducting, making roads and cities and towns and things, they had to go into the jungles. And when they went into the jungles of Costa Rica, they started to find these balls all over the place. And they thought, why are they in the middle of a jungle? And it took a geologist to work out what had actually happened. These balls, stone balls, were never supposed to be in the middle of a swampy jungle. No point being there. As far as the geological tests carried out, it's always been a swampy jungle for a long, long time. So they wouldn't have even got the stone from there. They were very unlikely we even placed it there. The likelihood is that they were washed there. That was the geologists, these experts that come back and say, they must have been washed there. Like a wave coming in and pushing stone balls aside and carrying them for miles and dropping them in certain locations. And it would seem that these balls have been dropped in several locations. Again, possibly suggesting some catastrophe had took place around about the same time, causing these same effects. In fact, you can see how they're clearing them away. They have to chains around them and drag them out because they're building constructions and roadways and stuff, and they keep coming across these things. It's surprising where these things turn up. This is brought to light by David Childress, and it was absolutely fascinating because it talks about it's a small booklet called The Trolleys to the Surf, and it's a story about the the Los Angeles Pacific Railway when they were building it. And of course, we all know that railways like to travel in straight lines, okay? And when they were cutting the hillside away to build this, all of a sudden they kept coming across these big balls, basically, these stone balls that just kept dragging them out one by one. Now, what happened was, in the documentation for that era, it's really unusual because they actually thought that they were dinosaur eggs. And it was actually listed as dinosaur eggs. But they're not. They're stone balls. And again, they must have been deposited there somehow. And of course, years and years later, when we come to clear away the land, we come to find these in the hundreds. If we go to Russia, we find stone balls. Exactly the same as the ones in Costa Rica. And this is in Russia, by the way, as you can see. Some of them are very, very, very large. If we go to Bosnia, we find stone balls. And again, you can see some of the size of these as they're being dug out. They're huge. We don't know what they represent. We've no idea. Siberia. Again, these guys are moving them out of the way. New Zealand. Just sat around. Italy. Now, once you start to get into these small ones, I was talking with a number of people and archaeologists as well, and I made that suggestion that I'm not so interested so much in the smaller ones, because I believe the smaller ones could have been used as weapons on slings and things like that. And I threw a couple of them in as an example, just to show you the difference between those and these huge ones, like these ones found in Croatia. I believe they're probably made purposely for slings, as, you know, for firing as weapons against their enemies. And I wanted to make the difference between these and those that are found in China, for an example. We wouldn't have been picking one of these up and placing it into some type of sling. It was just ridiculously too big and too heavy. And the problem of this would have been, it would have been taking too long to do so. Your enemy's already at your gates by the time you've loaded the second. So it would seem that these aren't used for those, the larger ones. Whatever those are, and they're scattered all around the world, is a mystery. We just don't know. There was some that are found in Malta. Now, here's the thing that you will not get to find out very often. If you go to Easter Island, it's always about the giant heads. Don't get me wrong, there is some stone walls, and they're fascinating because they're just like the ones in Cusco, Peru. But there is one stone here. There's one stone sphere, just one, on the whole island. And where is it? It's purposely situated in these rocks here. And where is that? That is dead centre of Easter Island. Dead centre of Easter Island. You will come across this outcroppings of stones, and inside it is this perfect spherical large stone. Nobody really talks about this. They talk about the heads, they talk about the walls. I like to think about the other things that aren't often in plain sight. And again, there's one on Easter Island. But monuments and things, you know, they're fantastic of what people have been able to do. In this case, the island of Ponape was completely made of basalt, and I think it's around about a level 5 on the hardness of rock. And they made a whole city out of basalt. Now, unfortunately, this city, the sea's come in since, as you can see, because this whole city's here. It's even underwater. It's made from basalt, every single piece of it, and it's extremely, some of these are extremely huge in size. But everything is built, as you can see, all underwater. As the seas come in, it's buried it, in a sense. Now, this is the basalt mountain, And there used to be two of them. There used to be one here and one here. And funny enough, and excuse me for saying, that the other mountain it's missing was called Shit Mountain. I don't know why, but that's what his name was. And it's disappeared because they took it apart piece by piece and made the city. They've made this city out of the pieces, chip by chip by chip. So they literally just dismantled the mountain of basalt to build that. It was just incredible. Now, there are a number of different books that make different suggestions as to what happened on Earth. You know, there's different theories. This one talks about some type of cosmic catastrophe. Again, here's this date, this magic date, 9,500 BC. Some type of catastrophe from space, maybe. You know, something within the solar system, something within the universe that created some massive change, which may have lifted or changed our oceans. 350 feet rise in oceans we may have seen. There's also lots of readings and writings about Atlantis, that Atlantis was a city that sunk. Really? Do you not think it's more feasible that the island didn't sink and that the waters came higher? Isn't that more feasible? Islands just don't tend to sink. You ever know of an island to sink? Think of an island known to sink. It would seem that the interpretation of the people that lived on that land would say, we're sinking into the sea, rather than turning around and saying the seas are getting higher. And that may have happened extremely fast if an incident took place that melted those ice caps so fast that it created 350 feet on global oceans around the world rise. If that happened, that's a major catastrophe. People, some authors, this is Barbara Hanklau, she mentions that the evidence towards the possibility of the ice caps may be melting because they were struck, there was something hit them. It caused tremendous heat, maybe something from space, maybe a meteor, a comet, who knows. But again, another trigger response for a catastrophe. There's been people who've referred to the fire. A fire might have taken place on Earth, not a catastrophe in the way of what we believe, but a fire from an ejection from the sun, a huge ejection from the sun that may have caused the melting of the ice caps, you know, and catastrophe to take place. We've all seen disasters around the planet, you know. This, believe it or not, though horrific it is in nature, is minor, is nothing compared to the evidence that we've got now to suggest how high waves have travelled to the height of mountains to carry the silt and mud with it, to carry half a mountain layer across 30, 40 miles in a wave is significant. Apart from that, we're also finding in stone some type of catastrophe on the basis of something that looks like a nuclear bomb had gone off, literally. You know, this layering in stone, it looks and suggests that some type of nuclear radiation maybe, we just don't know, it's mystery. There are sites around this planet, ancient sites, that talk about these battles that went on and are actually radioactive. They're highly radioactive. Nobody has any clue why these areas are so high in radiation. And of course, there's Robert Schoch, he's an absolute fantastic researcher, and his book, Forgotten Civilization, and he talks about some type of solar outburst. It could be. The sun could be going through some natural processes, and yes, that might be a process of the wiping and cleansing of the earth now and again. Who knows? We don't know. But we do know that there's enough evidence now that's come forward to say, yes, a huge catastrophe happened on this planet. Yes, it would indicate 9,500 BC. Yes, it seemed to affect every single civilization on this planet. Those that survived were probably clever. Those that survived maybe went underground. There's evidence to show that people did go underground. They built caverns and caves and cut into the rocks and lived down 100, 200 feet under the ground. Why did they do that? Why did they need to get out of the everyday sun or light? You know, you have to ask those questions. You know, how long did this era happen? And according to science and geologists, it would suggest that there was sudden freeze, and then the sudden heating process would again back up the evidence supporting a catastrophe of some sort. We know about the Sphinx. We've talked about that. People have talked about it many times, about the water erosion around the Sphinx. This has to be significant water erosion. And to have that, it has to be predated back to older than what it is for that weather climate to have been happening. Some of the stones used around the Sphinx were taken away to make the Sphinx temple. Some of these stones are huge as well. This is the Great Pyramid of Khufu, and what I did say at the beginning of this lecture, I wasn't going to go into telling you about the things you already know about the pyramids. You know, you see it on television all the time, and you hear it in lectures. But what I will show you about cut marks in stones, cut marks in stones, precision cut marks in stones, saw marks in stones. Some of these saw marks are incredible, absolutely incredible. The boreholes, okay, here's an example. This is a core drill in granite from pyramid site, and this is a modern core granite. There's no difference between them. This is us using our technology, 21st century technology now, according to what the Egyptians did. There is no difference between them. The only big difference is there, we say, is that we can show the technology how we did this. But how did these guys do that? That's the biggest question. What tools? Even so that the pieces taken out, there they are, in plain sight. And what's on them? You can see the resolutions of cuts going around as it's been bored out. Something is gone like this and just cored out. But what was that thing? What was that piece of equipment that was being used to core it? This is rose granite quartz, by the way, the rock. The granite, it's pink in colour. It's something that's around about a level 8. It is really, really, really hard rock. You know, what on earth could they have used to do this? And a close-up, microscopic, but you can see it. There they are. That's the evidence of machine marks. Anybody will tell you from an engineer point of view, these are machine marks. Use some type of boring out equipment. They even cut across, maybe testing, I don't know, on pieces of stone, testing the cut process. Now we all look at these big rocks, these, you know, Baalbek, they're very well known as, and thought to be the biggest, because people will say, well, they are the biggest in the world. Well, thought to be. They're absolutely huge. And how they were actually placed and utilised in this manner is just incredible. The old writings about this place, by the way, because the Romans ended up taking over this temple, the old writings suggest that it was for the gods to descend and land there. You know, it was a gift to the gods to locate them, to bring them to earth. Look at the size of these stones, they're crazy. Now, the biggest thing that's been talked about over the years is the fact is, everybody said, well, you know, how would they have cut it out from the bedrock? You can go round the sides and cut it all out like a block of cheese, but how do you cut underneath it? And this has been a big problem for many, many times. It's only recently come to light how that may have been done. You can see through some of these, there are lots of these stones, and they're absolutely huge, gigantic. This particular stone, which is, you can see, see here, it's absolutely huge. Do you see the machine marks? Can you see the machine marks on it? What are these marks? They're not there purposely. I mean, I can't, there's something that's created these machine marks again on a massive scale. And when you're cutting out rock like this, it's got to be easy, surely. I mean, you know, what a feat to do. You know, if I said to you, okay, what are you going to be doing for the rest of your life? What do you want to be when you grow up? Well, you're going to cut one piece of stone for the rest of your life. And that's it. And apparently this was abandoned, they said, because of a slight crack in it. Oh, tool guys, stop, whoa, tools down. I'm sorry guys, last 60 years has been a waste of time. We're just going to move on because we've got a slight fracture in this one. That's what we're told. But there's all these unusual markings on the stones and around here, which looks like scallops have been taken out. You can see it here and here. Here's a close-up. So scallops have been like taken out of the stone. It's like somebody's just scooped it out, you know. And that's what it looks like. And you think to yourself, God, it must have been easy for them to do this. It surely. You wouldn't want to spend three weeks, 3 months just doing one of those scallops. What the hell for? It must have been easy for them to do, surely. Scientists and authors have visited that location. And this is the channels they cut out by the side of this rock. Because the idea is that somehow, some way, they must have wanted to cut this from the bedrock for it to be an obelisk at some stage, because this is how basically obelisks were apparently constructed. But how would they have done that is science and archaeologists have said, well, we don't really know. I think you had to kind of visit the China to realise the methods behind this. This is exactly the same sort of thing. One huge obelisk. And have you noticed all these nodules underneath? What they did is they cut away the side and left these little nodules supporting it. And slowly, but surely, they cut the nodules away. So you ended it away from the bedrock. So it was only last year when people were going around saying, well, you know, we don't know how they would have cut it out from the bedrock. Well, the Chinese apparently knew how to do it. This isn't very well known, by the way. And this rock here is even bigger than the one I've just shown you previous. I wouldn't have liked to have been that guy there to knock the last one off, really. It would have been a bit of a treacherous job here. But look at the size of this. You can see the nodules. So they would have cut out these, and it would have been resting on these nodules and surely, slowly but surely would have just cut them away. As you can see. Now there have been some remarkable things. This, again, this pink rose quartz granite is just, it's beautiful stone. But the working of this stone is just so difficult. Even stonemasons say, you know, hey, we'll work with stone, but just don't give us that. You know, we just don't want to be dealing with that type. It's just really hard work to work with this type of stone because of its strength. Some of the locations, especially this location in Yangshan, which is Yangshan Quarry in China, there's been some amazing things that have been discovered here. And one of them is, it could be what they believe most recently discovered, the largest cut stone in the world, which makes the Baalbek stones look like pebbles because they believe it's been cut by hand. It doesn't look to be a naturally made area. Scientists have been in there and looked, and they believe it's evidence of it being cut and shaped. And as we can see, there's a few other ones in location. Again, these nodules, we've seen these in Peru, haven't we? Same time frame in China, of course. And we see these huge obelisks. What else do we see? Machine marks. Again, more machine marks. We don't know where they're from, but it's exactly the same thing. Same process being used. Some of these blocks are fantastic and being placed. But look what is this one. This one's the ones that the scientists have been looking at and saying it's evident that this has been cut to shape. Cut to shape to be the largest stone cut block in the world. All they had to do is lift it from the ground. I don't know how they'd do that. They'd have to be at it forever, you'd think, wouldn't you? But if that is the case, then it makes the Baalbek stones insignificant, doesn't it, compared to something of this nature. These sites all over the world and below it as well, believe it or not. You know, they're in the oceans. We see them all the time. According to scientists, that is natural. It's the sea-shaped it, the currents. Are you having a laugh? There's no way, absolutely no way these are, you know, just natural. That the oceans have cut away precision cuts in some of the hardest stone on the planet in such a way that it mathematically, you know, it comes together. You can show mathematics and geometry in it. Whew. And yet it's still officially listed as a natural anomaly. When we talk about the OLMEC in Mexico, which is interesting because these faces that were found look to be African in nature, when in fact there were no Africans around in that location, South America. And it is presumed that maybe trading may have been taking place, and that the OLMEC may have been a race that came from Africa. It's very possible. You know, now we've got to start considering that these people may have been travelling all over the place using different ships, you know. It is very feasible. The step pyramid may not be, it says not be older than other pyramids. Initially, everybody was saying, and the archaeologists, oh, it's, you know, it's an early attempt, because the guys couldn't get it right. Are you daft? Of course the guys could get it right. They knew what to do, they knew how to build. Whoever did it, they knew what they were doing. There's so much precision there, that isn't by chance. But, you know, several years earlier, they didn't have a clue what they were doing. Of course they knew what they were doing. This was done differently, and purposely differently. And this is done purposely differently because of the chambers inside and its construction and size and steps. Because all that seems to be, suggests the construction of it generates certain frequencies within these buildings, like I said earlier, as we see through the Great Pyramid. There's, again, frequencies that are involved inside the pyramids. This is the Grand Gallery. Now, there's only one pyramid. Again, a few people don't know this. That the three pyramids on the Giza Plateau, the Great Pyramid actually has 8 sides, not 4. And it comes down at these angles. If you look from a satellite image, you'll pick that out. You can pick it out on the Great Pyramid. The other two are just, you know, the 4-sided pyramids, but the Great Pyramid is different. Again, not 3 identical things. 8 sides of the pyramid. We know about the shafts. I've mentioned earlier a little bit about the shafts, and of course, finding, and there's been recent talk of a new chamber. Have you guys heard about this? There's apparently been new talk of this new, through radar, that they've discovered yet another new chamber, another hidden room within the Great Pyramid. And of course what happens is that the Egyptian government move in, and you know, and that's the end of that usually. Obelisks are very well known, and they've been utilised in all around the world in construction. And the design of them are usually very special. And it is suggested that there is an energy to them. Maybe it's that they tap into the ground, the natural electro or geomagnetic energies are utilised in some way with these obelisks. And that was kind of the idea. Maybe it is just an idea, but science side, some people would suggest, yes, you know, they are exactly connected to the geomagnetics of the Earth. Some people would also just say that, you know, they were just stonework to represent the pharaohs and so on and so forth, because they did have a lot of these inscribings on them. The largest ones were in Ethiopia, of all places, not Egypt, Ethiopia. And one actually did fall, ba-boom. And as it did, it crushed a small shed area, just right over here, crushed it. This was the world's largest obelisk. It just fell down, you know, it's just one of those things one day. The ground just give way to its weight. Right next to this place is this church, which is known as the Church of Our Mary of Zion. And, you know, they have these patrolling guards around there because they say, and they've said for many years, that they have inside, locked away, the Ark of the Covenant. I don't really believe that to be true. It doesn't exactly look like Fort Knox, does it, guys? But this is what they say, and it's apparently documented hundreds of times, and apparently people go and pray at the side of these, but they have patrol guards, actually, armed patrol guards, the Ark of the Covenant. Rock-cut churches. Do you know this is all cut out of one piece of rock? A whole church, all in one go. One piece of rock. How on earth did he do these things? Cut out one piece. It's like it's cut out of butter in the earth. How is it cut out? This is the same piece of rock. It's been built into a building and cut out inside to make it rooms and windows and holy sites throughout the world, and especially in India, where they talk about these locations where the gods came down to earth. The same sort of thing that I've been told. But how on earth was it done? Surely it could not have been easy to do. This granite stone, again, some of the hardest rocks in the world. And yet it's cut out as if it's cut out of butter with a butter knife. It's just crazy. Whole cities cut out of just rock. You know, these aren't pieces put together. These are all cut out, like a stencil in the ground. They're amazing. Pieces of rock in the desert. You're walking one way and it looks just like a piece of rock until you get past it and turn around and look at the back of it. Oh no, there's a building inside it. They're all over our planet. This is Jordan. They're all over. This rock, just balancing here, is looks to be precisionally cut. Archaeologists say it's natural, but it looks to be precision to the laser, like a laser, cut straight down it. These places are all over the world. In fact, this cavern here, these rocks were cut out and made these chambers. And the rock inside is incredibly smooth, polished. It's like a mirror. Especially in this one. You can see it here. If I turn the camera around and look at the other way, you can see how polished these walls are. They're like a mirror. How to get them like that? Incredible heat needs to be required. Incredible heat. But how did he even cut them in the first place? And they're all over planet Earth, these things. All over. Evidence of just as if it was simple to cut out. You know? Again, it just looks like somebody's cut up a bread loaf there, doesn't it? Crazy. Not just single cuts, but zigzag cuts as well. How do you do zigzag cuts in a rock? There are some things scattered around in this country, some of you will know, such as these. And we do have obelisks. We had these obelisks scattered around the country as well. Some of them were very well known, some not so well known. This is the Runstone Church in Yorkshire, UK. It has actually one here. So they built the church around it, in a sense of speaking. So obelisks is nothing new, really, to be honest. They've been going on for a long time. They actually put a metal cap on this one to stop it from wearing away, to be honest with you. But obelisk is a thing which is all around the world, in Ethiopia, in Peru, you know, in China, in Rome, took the idea, England. Even Egypt has its own secrets, not so much in the eye of what we see, the pyramids and stuff, but below the pyramids, the areas underneath, which is, there are like 3 different levels to Giza, and underneath there, it's just a vast cities underneath. It's also interesting to note, again, about the Osiris was always described to have an elongated head of some sort. And who were these people? You know, the brain mass is suggested to be literally 8 to 10% more than normal human-sized brain fitted in those skulls. This is the Bent Pyramid. It was referred to as the Bent Pyramid in Egypt. And again, this inside generates a perfect A sharp again. And they built that using these tools, apparently, accordingly. You know, it looks like something that the kids would use these. And they built that using them, according to archaeological experts. But saw marks and cut stones have been going on for such a long time, and even just scattered around in plain sight around Egypt. You know, you could just be wandering around looking at rocks on the floor, and you need to look at these rocks on the floor, because everybody's looking and gasping at the pyramids and not looking down on the floor where the real interesting stuff is, such as holes, precision cut holes, saw marks in stone. It's as if it's just took out of chips. This is you can see the boring where it's chipped off this bit in these stones. How did they do that one? And they did this one from Russia. How do you bore that out? It's not something obviously can turn, is it? I'd be dumbfounded, absolutely dumbfounded. But do you know what? These things exist. They're there in plain sight, teasing us as to try and figure out what they are. We don't know what these are. Archaeologists said they were SPHINX. Again, cut marks in stone. This is all cut from one stone. And do you know what? It's that rose quartz hard granite again. You know, it's so hard and so difficult to work with. Yet they managed to cut all that out from one piece of stone. That's all one piece of stone. It's incredible. And of course these SPHINX, what they said they believed they were SPHINX, these drain holes, were halfway up. You know, it's not, it can't be SPHINX, we don't know what they are. Look at this one, 1,400-year-old advanced ancient drilling technology. Look at the size of this. And it's got machine marks in it. Just sat around. They're incredible. This is probably one of the most significant discoveries in Egypt. And there was about 7 of these, and they're like giant sarcophagus. And apparently we were told nothing was ever in them, but there's about 7 of them entombed. And they're huge. What was in them? The Egyptian government said they were empty, but hey, you know, they said the pyramids were empty when they got in there, didn't they? And they said the sarcophagus was empty. And even the new part underneath they discovered, which is underwater in the Egyptian pyramid, because they realised it goes down another mile. And that's where construction started. Not on the surface where the pyramids are, where we see. It started a mile underground and built shafts coming up, and then built the pyramids. Even underwater down there, they found sarcophagus, and they said, oh yeah, they're all empty. And we can see the sides of these. And again, you know, they're cut into with hieroglyphics. But inside, it's perfectly cut. It feels like marble, it's smooth, it's absolutely spot on. And the thing is this is what we refer to as diorite stone. Diorite stone is even harder and more difficult to use than the pink granite stone. Anybody would know, anybody you talk to out there, stonemason, whatever, would say, you always stay away from this stuff. You don't even go near this stuff because you're wasting your time. The Egyptians somehow, though, liked to work with it. And not only liked to work with it, but created fantastic cuts and marks and sculptures, stonework in them. And what's really interesting is that when you actually start to look at the detail on these, it's incredible how symmetric they actually are. The scientists that have looked at this have said the only way this could have been cut, that this side of the face is identical from one side to the other, because even the best sculptures in the world, you know, they're not spot on. When you really start to measure around the lasers, you start to realise, that eye is not quite the same as that eye, and that side is not quite the same as that. These are. And most of the scientists and guys that have looked at this have said, there's only one way that could be made, and that can't be by human hand. It has to be done by machine, created by machine, that does not flaw, that does only exactly what you tell it to do. That copies and duplicates one side of the face to exactly as the other. Scientific studies have been carried out, surveys have been carried out, laser-guided testing has been carried out, and it shows they're identical either side. And we've never found that in any statue made by hand, apparently, on planet Earth. You know, we're yet to find them, but the Egyptians did it regularly. And how they did it remains a mystery. So it would seem from the trips around the world, no matter where you go, it's the television programs that we see, Ancient Aliens, National Geographic's, you know, Mystery of the Sphinx and all those sort of things, you get to be told the same thing, regurgitated information over and over and over again. You're going to see and hear the same things all the time. But when I went out there initially, for me it was about, are they telling the truth on these programs? You know, is there a little bit of, is there something dodgy going on? You know, are they lying a little bit, putting the icing on the cake? It happens on TV shows. Well, in fact, it was the opposite. When I started looking into it, I thought, well, yeah, I could see all the things they were talking about. But then once I got off the beaten track of the tourist guides, that is when things really started to show themselves for what they are. When you come across these machine platforms, when you come across these amazingly cut stones, when you come across these areas of high magnitude of magnetics and geomagnetics in certain stones, when you come across bedrock cut out for 11.5 miles, for under one site, ancient site to another ancient site to another ancient site. These things you don't see on Ancient Aliens TV show. These things you don't see on National Geographic. I'm hoping so. I'm hoping that, you know, that some of this stuff does get out to the mainstream, because I think it's needed. I think it's very important to get the other stories out about some of the even bigger mysteries, and especially from China. I mean, there is this kind of, you know, fragmented wall between us and China, you know. We don't get much information coming out there, but now it's coming out, and it's looking like they have exactly the same things, if not bigger and larger than what we generally thought was the biggest constructions in the world. For me, it's a fascinating journey. It's opened my eyes that to say, absolutely, there's been a civilization on this planet worldwide that has dominated this planet at a time and taken that knowledge to every single country on this planet Earth. And they've done it everywhere, shown how to make these stones, shown how to cut them, shown how to move them, shown how to machine them. The bones that are dug up in those areas, they seem to be elongated skulls. Nobody wants to talk about them. There seems to be a missing culture, and maybe that culture was responsible for bringing these wonderful pieces of artwork to us. And if that is the case, then we really have got to dig a lot deeper to figure out why we get told the untruths. Why are they missing that out? Why are they misleading us? It's about dates, times, history, archaeology. It's hard to know the reasons why. I haven't got all the answers, but what I can say is the stones and buildings and things that are discovered out there aren't the mystery. The mystery is who did them and where's the machinery? Where's the equipment that they managed to have to do those feats? And that's probably one of the biggest mysteries of all. And you'll see, we keep getting told time and time again, these are the questions that we have to ask, is that these are supposed to be the tools that made these things. These stones, copper, and brass tools. Absolutely no way. Thank you very much.